All right, everybody, welcome back to Hyper Growth, the podcast dedicated to unpacking what it takes to build a scalable e-commerce brand. I'm your host, Arjun Jolly, co-founder of Ad Quadrant, and joining me today is Ray Lee, CEO of Sene, spelled Sene. Sene is an LA-based apparel company whose mission it is to make sizeless clothing possible for everyone and to empower people of all shapes, colors, and sizes to feel their best. Investors and advisory board members for Sene include Nike's former head of strategy for North America, Under Armour's former chief digital officer, Adidas's former chief supply chain officer, and others as well. Ray, so awesome to have you. Thank you so much for joining the show today.
Thank you so much, Arjun, for having me. Great to be here.
So let's start the show by just talking a little bit about why. Why did you launch Sene? Tell us a little bit about the story, especially considering you came from a consulting background, graduated from Cornell. What was the journey like, and why are we here today with this company?
Yeah, I was planning on just climbing the corporate ladder out of school. I originally wanted to be a lawyer, then realized it wasn't for me. So was consulting, was doing management consulting at Deloitte, then went into brand consulting at Interbrand, all in New York. And after a while, I was tired of making PowerPoint decks. In consulting, it's fun because you get to learn a lot, you get a great tool set, but a lot of times the recommendations that you make don't actually make it into real life. And so an early version of Sene that we called Suitable was really just a nights and weekends project. It was a way for me to get my hands dirty and to see what it actually was like to build a company, a brand from scratch. And it was just kind of really just messing around. I was traveling for work I was doing the global rebrand for a company called Qualcomm. I was in Shanghai for a weekend. A buddy and I were like, let's get some custom suits made. I was shocked at how fast it was. And it was the first time where I thought, why are all brands standard size? Why couldn't it just be size me? And, not the first to think this, but I think, when I initially started, it was just to scratch the itch. And over time, we just realized that actually, there's so many companies in the world, but the vast majority of brands carry 5 sizes. There's, fashion is because there's so much inventory that's made that doesn't fit, that gets returned. Fashion is the second most wasteful industry in the world. Over 70% of people are also in between sizes. So it's like, oh, this just makes a ton of sense. Like we're in this right moment in time where we can actually leverage data science and technology and smart manufacturing, paired with really great branding to create a new type of relationship that we can have with clothing, and ultimately realize like, oh wow, this is actually a big idea and worth pursuing.
That's amazing. And I think that the uniqueness about your brand is what you're doing from that sizeless component, right? Like everything's custom. So How does that work? What's the user flow look like in terms of somebody, gets their first exposure to Sene, it's a new customer coming in. What's the approach like to get that product from website experience all the way through to delivery and wearing on their backs?
Yeah, we created a technology called Smart Fit, which allows people to create a one-of-a-kind size without needing a tape measure and without getting their body scan. And so it replaces the traditional tailor in that sense and democratizes really access to custom, makes it really simple, really easy. And also we've automated a lot of the traditionally manual parts of custom. So SmartFit both helps the user, but also helps the factory in terms of streamlining a lot of processes that are traditionally very manual. And so you just go online, you take SmartFit, ask you questions about your height, your weight, typical standard sizes, how you prefer things to fit, takes about 60 seconds, generates instantly a unique fit. When you order, we take that technical pattern, it's sent to the factory, they automate the cutting, it's hand assembled, and then it's delivered to them. So, for RTs, it ships in as quick as 2 to 3 days. And then for all of our other products, like our sizeless denim or sizeless athleisure suit and whatnot, it takes about 2 to 2.5 weeks for it to ship.
Such an amazing concept. And I love the fact that, at the end of the day, you made the comment about fashion being a really wasteful industry, especially with the uptick of fast fashion in recent decades. It's really incredible to see how the journey that the consumer goes through with you guys and what you're doing it's a double-edged sword because it's great for the consumer because they're, really getting the benefit of having that custom fit clothing. And then on the flip side, it's great for the environment on that sustainability component. So really, really awesome concept, Ray, and kudos to you on starting it. Now, if we were to actually zoom out and just go all the way back to day one when you started the company, you had that experience in Hong Kong. You went to get that custom fit suit. The idea triggered on the basis of how fast that was. But what was day one like when you were starting seeing that like, first point where you said, "Hey, I want to build this." What did that look like and what was going through your head?
Yeah. Our story is a little bit non-traditional because what Sene is today was for a while after, started messing around the project. So initially we created a brand called Suitable. And, essentially a buddy said, "Hey, can I buy some stuff from you?" And I just thought, do I mark up the cost by 2x? Is that what it is? And then threw up a website, had some of my friends model, and that was it. So that was day one. There was no ceremony. It was just basically throwing up a Shopify site.
Nice.
And it started actually getting some traction, and then it got busy enough for me to go part-time at my day job and part-time on Sene, and then, or actually what was Suitable, and then had a little showroom in New York, and it was very slow. It was very hard, actually. Put in a bunch of life savings. It was growing, but it was slow. Then my wife and I decided to move to LA, change the brand to Sene, but it wasn't nothing like the company today. We opened a retail store in LA. My cousin joined as a co-founder, and had started thinking started realizing the initial underpinnings of what the company is today. But primarily we were selling suits for men for their weddings, and personal savings were getting drained. Overhead is crazy. Thought we were about to run out of cash. It was incredibly stressful. And this was, so in the beginning of 2019, we realized or 2019, yeah, my son was just born. We were 2 months away from running out of cash. I was freaking out. And, we had this huge retail store lease with 4 more years on the lease. And we were like, we have to make a big change. And a lot of people are saying maybe it's time to shut things down, move on. Had a great experience, great run. And we thought, no, you know what? Actually, we're not thinking big enough. Let's take all the insights we've learned from measuring people in person and think about, let's really go big. We realized that sizing has to be very, very simple. It has to be dummy proof. The product has to be incredible. The brand needs to be amazing. And so we got rid of the store. We created our first hero product, got rid of all of our products, created the first hero product, which was the Flex suit, and then relaunched a Kickstarter in May 2019. And thankfully it took off. We did about 100,000 in 14 days. And that funded the start of what Sene is today, in our totally new business model where all 100% of orders come through SmartFit. And it was successful, and started growing fast. And after a little bit, brought in some angel investors. But it was, it was at the last second where we should have gone under, and a bunch of things had to go right in a row, and they all did. And then it started what Sene is today.
I would love to dig deeper there because at the end of the day, we're in a really, tricky year, I guess you could call it, from a macroeconomic climate and just what's happening around us. And, it's really it's an important year for a lot of brands, right? Are they going to be able to fight through and make it with what's happening both on the, consumer spending standpoint, macroeconomic factors, paid media standpoint, acquisition, retention, et cetera? Are they really going to be able to fight through that? Or is it a time to change their strategy and look through a different lens? And I remember when you and I met or got connected through this event at Shopify that we spoke at, which was the AAPI entrepreneurship event, you shared a story about that turning point for you in respect to your business. And I'd love to just unpack that because some of our listeners might be in that state where they're building their businesses. Maybe they're doing, 15, 20, 30 million in revenue. But at the same time, they might be in a point where their growth rate stopped and they don't know how to unlock that next 10 to 15. So I'd love to unpack, with you, Ray, what that turning point was for you and that story in terms of that moment where you thought, it was going to go one direction, but it changed and it went in a more positive direction.
Yeah. I think a lot of people, when times are hard, think about pulling back. And for us, I think we've always tried to level up. And, I think we have a firm belief that doing what's right for the customer ultimately will win regardless of the macro environment. And so it's like, and when it's really tough, how do we create creative that's so much more beautiful and dialed in? How do we think about making product that they really, really want and make the quality incredible? How do we improve our service level? We've always operated really lean, so there's never been a reason to have to, we didn't have to cut during COVID, we didn't have to cut last year, we don't have to cut now. Like, I think we've always been like, okay, let's just be really thoughtful about our hiring. So on that side, it's not like we had anything to save by buckling down anyway. But yeah, I think the encouragement's always, it's so easy to blame the macro environment. And it's a self-fulfilling prophecy when you say it's so hard, people aren't spending money right now. And then you start to look at, how do I just discount a bunch to save the business? And we've been in positions before where we have tried that, and it's hard. And I think it really is bad for your psyche when you start to think that way.
Yep.
And I think one, you have to be like, how convicted am I about our brand and our product? If I really believe it's good, how do I rethink our marketing, rethink our creative, rethink all this stuff and go even deeper into it? Or do I need to level up and improve? But yeah, I think it's all about up your game and then focus. Focus, I think, is the other big thing, is do less, but do it extremely well. And that's worked for us.
Awesome. Yeah. I think to your point, it's easier to retreat. Right. It's easier to retreat and blame external and sometimes even internal factors on why. But as entrepreneurs and, business builders, it's just a matter of figuring out how we crack the code of getting out of our comfort zone and getting comfortable with being uncomfortable and figuring out how we, kind of treat every day as that challenge for future growth, no matter what that day holds. So, it's really, really interesting to just see kind of what's happening and how brands are adapting. I think, for us, we work with a lot of challenger brands where they have that mindset of, this is the opportunity to actually lean in and capture market share. Whereas plenty of other brands in the market are thinking, okay, let's pull back on all of our acquisition channels and focus only on our lifecycle marketing and taking that approach. But pros and cons, every business is in a different stage. That being said, conviction is important, right? In terms of building that business. So when you were, building the business in the earlier days, would love to just shift the conversation over towards the growth aspect and how you were acquiring customers then, how you're acquiring customers now, what's changed in terms of the growth cycle from when you were initially, let's say bringing on your first 1,000 customers all the way to today. And how that acquisition strategy has changed over the years.
Yeah. It's funny. I mean, I think our bread and butter is still Facebook. Mm-hmm. Love Meta, even in the midst of iOS 14 and all that. I think we're actually having the best results that we've seen on Meta now. I mean, apart from the early days when you get, crazy ROAS. But I think Meta's a great platform. It's one of those things too, where I think in the last couple months, we've also restructured our approach to Meta, and that's part of why I think we're seeing really good results now. But another thing where I think people, you got to be really wary of what you read on social media, where people say, oh, Meta's so hard now, it's terrible, it's all about TikTok, and then people realize actually TikTok's really hard to scale with. And so we love Meta. We think it's great. And then also we have been doing more and more collabs. So collabs is a huge part of our strategy. It's great for social proofing the brand. We did one last year with a Peloton instructor named Emma Lovewell. Super successful. It really surprised us by how well it sold, and we're continuing to do that. And so I think in terms of fashion brands, there's just permutations of strategies, but what we're doing on collabs isn't tremendously innovative. One of my hero brands is Montclair. And those guys, they have the Genius Project where they partner with incredible creative design, creative directors, and they launch collabs every month. And that's incredible that a company of that scale can coordinate such tight releases on that. So like tons of companies do collabs. They do it for a reason. It works really well. Making beautiful creative and creating a distinctive world is so important. So I think we are focused on being really good and methodical on performance marketing, but we're spending a lot of time on how do we build the world, how do we push our creative. We think we're just scratching the surface of where we can take the brand, and ultimately we have relationships with the brand narrative, not like the functional properties of a product. So that's something where we're continuing, like we're trying to spend a lot of time this year on improving the quality of our brand, focusing, elevating.
Interesting. So how are you thinking about creative? What's the approach there in respect to, again, with Meta and obviously other platforms like TikTok and whatnot, where creative strategies are key? How are you guys thinking about it in respect to the growth cycle that you're on right now?
Yeah. We have a creative team that's in-house. So we always thought we're not going to outsource the production of creative. That needs to be one of our superpowers. It's also, I think just one of my strengths and one of the strengths of the company. So what's kind of nice, because we kind of manage all that in-house, when we do the editorial style shoots, we're also building in time to do ad creative. So it's all concepted together. A lot of times companies like parse this out. They do the lifestyle shoot, then they do ads, which is all very UGC-ish. And for us, we're like, let's be very efficient in the way we create content, and let's let our ad creative also feel a little bit more editorial, where a lot of people saying like UGC, which is great, and we have UGC stuff that works, but actually a lot of our best performing creative is very beautifully produced, and it gives people a sense of the brand and the vibe. So I think just for the nature, the DNA of our brand, what resonates with our customers, we find that the more we're progressively like stepping up what we're investing into the production of all of our assets, and also the kind of models we have, what we're spending on location, what we're spending on all this stuff, and a lot of that's all going into ads. It's it's not a separate creative bucket that's going into ads, and that's been good for us. So I think for founders, it's all about, you got to find what content really works for you. And it may be UGC, it might not be, it might be more produced stuff. It's all about being authentic to the brand DNA. For us, I think a lot of our customers buy our stuff because they like that it feels more elevated. So some of the UGC stuff doesn't work as well for that.
Totally agree. Yeah, I think there's an element of where creative has that play for your brand, right? Because some brands can be really successful on only having UGC, and that's core to their brand ethos, whereas yours is going to be more of that elevated brand shoot. And again, Montclair, I think you're right. They've done an amazing job with that Genius project, and brand wise, I mean, they're just. I got to say, I have one of their jackets and I love it. It's my favorite jacket when it gets cold, and it's a good product, a good brand. And I think that combination of actually having that experience all the way through, from first touch creative all the way through to owning the product and living with it and all that stuff, it tells you something about the brand as a whole, and it's a story that really weaves together. So really amazing to see that you guys are doing something similar there, Ray. So I'd love to just, before we close out, Ray, I'd love to just ask you to maybe part some wisdom on, founders and other e-commerce entrepreneurs, let's say businesses that are maybe doing, 20 million in revenue on their D2C businesses. What do you think that they should be paying attention to this year and next year in respect to growing their businesses?
Yeah. I think one thing is that it never gets any easier. Right?
Well said.
I've just been talking to my buddies who are running, companies that are doing 75 or companies that are doing 150, 200. And they say that it's sometimes when they get to that stage, it's actually the hardest it's ever been for them. So I think when you keep that in mind and you're just mentally prepared that it doesn't get easier, you can kind of enjoy the ride a little bit more because you're not waiting for this moment of relief and things are more peaceful. It just gets more complicated. So I think that's one. But I think the other thing that just seems to be the theme is brand building is even more important at that time because I think for companies that haven't invested well in brand, they start to suddenly hit walls or ceilings around that stage, right? So I think you never want to be in a position where you suddenly have to really elevate your brand because it's been neglected and for some reason acquisition was easier. And I think the best brands are, or the largest companies are incredibly thoughtful about their brand and have figured out the world. And when things are hard, people come back and the brands they love. So like we need to be good operators, of course, but yeah, in all these conversations I'm having, everyone's talking about their brand and the permission that the brand has to do certain things.
Awesome. I think it's really good advice, especially considering that brand is often one of the most neglected things when you're focused on what's bringing in new customers. So I think it's a really, really great point. Well, Ray, I really appreciate you carving out the time to sit with us today. I think our listeners are going to really find your insights just incredibly helpful. Scenestudio.com for Ray Lee's company, amazing apparel company. Would definitely recommend checking it out. Thanks again, Ray. And to all of our listeners, thank you for listening and watching. Thanks for tuning in and stay tuned for the next episode of Hypergrowth. Take care, everyone.